Okay, I wasn't able to make a video 2 days ago because I only had my Chromebook, and it doesn't work. The video thing doesn't work on this, or at least it looks like it works. And then when you go and watch the video back, it just says that it doesn't. The system didn't save it or something. I don't know. But yeah, I spoke. I was listening to a lot of things about what's happening in Iran, and I don't know. I don't know if I can trust everything that I believe. I do not trust anything that I believe online. I feel like a lot of people say we don't want boots on the ground, but yeah, technically, boots on the ground actually just means military men in armed gear with trucks and stuff. And yeah, just because there are not boots on the ground, that doesn't mean that there aren't trainers on the ground. And I think that's probably a good way of explaining it. So it makes me wonder, because all these there's lots of uprising going on in Iran, and there's lots of people wearing balaclavas. You don't know who they are. You don't know if they're Iranian people. Are they actually French people? Are they actually English people? Are they actually is there? I want an Islamic sort of decline. I need an Islamic decline because I am basically here to end Islam. There's a lot of people, though, in Iran who would come out and say, oh, it's not the religion, it's nothing to do with the religion, this is just, this is all to do with politics, and we don't want to be oppressed and stuff like that. And to me, I feel like those people are a bit stupid because it is the religion. The religion has some sort of paedophile and a warlord and someone who deliberately was meant to look like this and to deliberately look like a bad example for humans. And it was given as a sort of prophet to see who wanted to worship that person, to see who liked that person's views, to see who liked all the Sharia laws are just a bunch of things that I do not agree with. Stoning women for cheating on you. I mean, this is ridiculous. You are meant to grow, to live, to change. And if you've been married since you were a young child, of course you're going to change and not want the partner. The partner should be arrested for marrying someone so young. And even if you are 20, you're going to be a different person when you're 40. So if you want to get a divorce and you're in a sort of situation where you are like, well, my husband's provided for me, he's done everything for me, but that's only because I wasn't able to get a job because of my sex. And if you're in that sort of situation, of course cheating might be what you're forced to do. Your partner doesn't want to leave you want to leave them, you find someone better and you cheat. And then to think that you can get stoned to death for doing things like that, that's what Sharia law is. It's a bunch of laws that I do not agree with. And therefore, if you're someone who comes forward and says, it's not your religion, there's nothing wrong with your religion, I'm just like, why wouldn't you think there's something wrong with the religion? The religion is the problem. The religion is the reason why the world is so fucked up, because there's a lot of inverted beliefs within Christianity, within Judaism, within Hinduism, and Islam is basically just a big long list of all the things that I don't agree with. And therefore, if you're someone who's going to come forward and say there's nothing wrong with your religion, then you're not helping the matter. You're just ignoring the fact that there is something wrong with their religion, and therefore, I want to support the Iranian people because I know that there are a lot of people who are against Islam. They are against oppression. There are lots of people in England who have fled because of the Islamic regime, and I think this is the reason why people don't see refugees as being a bad thing. These people have come here as refugees because they know that they don't want to wear the veils and they don't want the oppression that women are facing over there, so they've come over. I know that's what happened to Sam Asghari. His sisters wanted to become doctors and they couldn't do that in Iran, so they had to flee to America. So if you're fleeing because of the Islamic regime, then you're probably a pretty decent person. You recognize that there is something wrong with the Islamic religion and the Islamic belief and the Islamic way of life and the Islamic way of thinking, and you're running away from that. And therefore, the people who are fleeing from Islamic countries because they hate the religion are the good ones. But the people who are fleeing from Islamic countries just because, I'm a Sunni and they're a Shiite and we're both Muslim and we both agree, or even if you're just a Muslim supporter, that's how I see Keir Starmer as being, like, whether it's actually him on the world scene talking, or if it's actually just his avatar and there's like a bunch of people like kind of controlling his avatar. Because I'm seeing a couple of stuff online where he's talking about how proud he is about arresting people who make social media posts against against things that he doesn't approve of. You know, I'm seeing images like that, but I'm thinking, is that actually him, or is that just an avatar? Because that kind of looks fake. That doesn't look real. Then maybe there's people who are watching this video and thinking that this is just an avatar talking. You know, I feel like I'm getting a much different perspective to what the average person is seeing, because the average person, I went to Leeds and they had like a big sauna, the really big sort of solarium, but it was actually more of a sauna. It was a bit warmer than a solarium, but yeah, it's there's a lot of people in there talking and stuff, and you know, they were all completely believing that the Labour government is you know, supporting Islam and helping Islam, and it's working with the Islamic Republic, with the Islamic regime, and now that there's this sort of belief that the Islamic regime was only set up by the English and the people who are ruling the England country, and France as well, and I don't know, the BBC seems to be siding with that, and you know, I don't really know what's going on, because no one's talking to me, no one's saying anything to me, so I can't. I would like people to actually come to my face and tell me, because if I'm seeing things online, I'm actually thinking, who's making this popular, who's putting this at the sort of, whoever's controlling the internet. There's my higher self is controlling the internet, and that seems to be what the feeds are coming through, but I don't feel like it's just my higher self. I feel like there's a bunch of people who know that people are being guided by the internet. They're being guided by what they're seeing on the internet, and if everything on the internet, on Instagram and on, I'm not watching X that much, but I'm watching Instagram, and if everything that I'm seeing on Instagram is all propaganda by some sort of elitist group that want the public to think that Labour government is supporting these people, you know, does that mean that the Labour government is actually supporting these people? You know, I think some of them are. I definitely think some of them are. So I think they've got a puppet government where there's a bunch of people who are saying that there's nothing wrong with these Islamic Muslims. You're Islamophobic, and saying things like that, even though these Muslims do actually support the idea of killing non-Muslims, and they do like the idea of there being an Islamic caliphate that comes in and imports. No, it forces Sharia law, the stoning of women, the banning of eating pork, banning of drinking. You're not allowed to drink. You're not allowed to. What other shit is there? There's nothing wrong with marrying a 15-year-old. If a father wants to marry his child, and the child, or his 18-year-old, and the 18-year-old has no clue that she's been married off to someone, to think that is marriage. That is not marriage. That is called a parcel. That is a parcel that you pass on to someone. That's not a fucking person. To idea that Sharia law includes things like you're allowed to sell your children off and get them to marry people, or even forced conversions, and then killing them if they leave. You are now a Muslim because you said this fucking one line that proves that you're a Muslim, and we forced you to say it unless you'd kill you, and you've been forced. You know, if you were only a Muslim because you were forced to, or felt fearful for your life for it, and then you want to convert out of that, that's not the same. There's a difference between people who are Muslim because they chose it, they listened to it, they believed it, they loved it, they liked it, they supported it, they didn't see anything wrong with it, and then them converting. You know, if that's what's happened, then I don't care. You know, I really don't care. If you get killed, you supported everything that I hate. Now, if they kill you for it, well, there's plenty of people who I like better who might end up dying from this, and therefore I want the worst. You know, if there's like a sweet jar and I get to remove some of the different flavors, you know, I'm going to remove the worst. I'm going to remove the worst, and okay, some of the better ones might get stolen by my mum or whatever. Hey, that's my one. Hey, no, it might be annoying seeing other people eat my favorite one, but at the end of the day, I know which ones I want mostly to go. And if you're someone that loved it once, maybe you've changed, maybe it's different though, because I do need people who know about Islam, and for you to understand Islam, sometimes you need to have. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I really don't care. To be honest, I think the world is so bad that it would be so much easier just to kill the good ones and just let all the squirrels be turned into to humans, and then let the big war happen, and then I just want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. So, but let's go back to whatever I'm trying to say. What was I trying to say? Talking about the Iranian problem. You know, I think TYT is disgusting. I think what they've said about the Iranian people, that this king is just another dictator, another puppet that's going to be used to implement Israel's law, Israel's will and whatever. There's truth to that. I'm Israel, and I, the Iranian people, there are some good people and there are some bad people. There are some people that didn't deserve oppression, and there are some people who did deserve oppression. Why? Because there would be people who would be like, there's nothing wrong with the Islamic religion. I mean, technically, they're just a list of everything that God hates and doesn't agree with, but there's nothing wrong with it. You're blind and you're ignorant, and if you've gone through 40, 50 years of shit, it's bad. But at the same time, if you have a naughty kid that's just stealing off you, doing drugs, maybe breaking your neighbor's windows and just causing problems, and maybe even bullying children at school, you need to punish them by taking them to a reform school like Paris Hilton. She went to a reform school where shit happened and apparently horrible things happened to her. I don't know the details, and I don't know who, but I know that she would have come out a different person. She would have come out probably a lot more angry, but at the same time she would have been far more aware of the type of people that actually exist, and sometimes you can't tolerate evil. You have to stand up against it. You can't just be like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. So there's nothing wrong with stoning someone if they cheat, and the only reason why they cheated is because they kind of wanted to get out of a relationship, but their family told them that if they get a divorce they're going to be murdered, so they've ended up cheating, and now they're going to be stoned for cheating when that was their only option. That is what Sharia law is. And if you think there's nothing wrong with the religion, it's just like, of course there's something wrong with the religion, because this is where the rules come from. This is where your sick beliefs come from. They come from a sick religion, and so to deny that, to say that there's no separation between church and state in Iran, and that there's nothing wrong with religion, it's just the Islamic regime, that's just you being incredibly ignorant to what this Islamic religion is about. Because the reason why there are so many problems in Iran is because they are using a backwards religion as a way of enforcing shit and horrible things. Now, if you're going to protect the religion whilst trying to get rid of the government, it's not going to work. Why? Because the government got its power through its religion. It's got its power through its false teachings and its lies about who God is and who is an enemy of God. So therefore, you need to separate the fact that that there are religious people who are using politics as part of using religion as a part of way of implementing their politics, and then there are other people who are just trying to do what's best for people. And when it comes to the Iranian people, there's a high portion of Muslims. I think I think it's 30%. Some say it's 30% are Muslim and only 10% are like radicals or something like that. And for some reason, the 10% of radicals took over the regime because there was 30% of Muslims, who saw nothing wrong with their religion. This is kind of why they suffered. Do they deserve to be free from this now that they probably are not Muslim? Because I don't know, if you suffered a lot, you might start realizing that actually all this suffering is happening because I'm worshipping a false religion. I didn't think there was anything wrong with stoning an adulterer, but now that I've been in an abusive relationship for 10, 20 years, I want out, and I can't get out because of my religion, and therefore you might start hating the religion. I don't know how long it takes you to wake up and realize that actually your religion is the problem, but people who still think the religion is not the problem, these are people who are still asleep. Hence, if there's a huge number of people who are dying over this protest, it's bad. But at the same time, I am wondering, who is dying? Because if these are the same people who are fighting against the regime, but are still happy to call themselves a Muslim because they don't see anything wrong with their problems, that's the thing. I saw another post today actually where they said that there was this woman who kind of, I don't know, I didn't see the conversation or anything, but she was getting very aggressive and she slapped this woman a couple of times, and then it said that she had ended up dying and how awful it was because she ended up dying over this post. And okay, she didn't do that much. She didn't kill anyone, she didn't hurt anyone, she was just slapping someone. But at the same time, she was slapping that woman in a very, I don't give a shit about you way. I'm completely, I'm just going to do this. It was in a very nasty way, and people could think that murder is far worse than just slapping someone. Yes, it is, But the fact that she was slapping her in that way, it kind of makes you wonder, what type of person is she? What kind of person is she? What kind of things is she contributing to the world? What kind of skills would she have to think that it's kind of okay to just slap someone in sort of this kind of unprovoked kind of way? And, it's bad that she died, but if she was a bad person, is the world a better place without her? That's kind of what I was thinking, and I feel like in that same way, that's kind of how I feel like that. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who's dying. I don't know how many. It's likely that that it's less than what they're making out. If you just seen 100 people being shot in a couple of minutes, you would probably easily believe that it's 20, 30,000. But maybe you just happen to catch a bad patch. Maybe this is something that's only happened twice, and maybe the numbers are 2,000 rather than 20,000. I don't know, but I know that if you're in a horrible situation like that, you might start believing that this is happening in every town and every city, and it maybe it is, but maybe not the killing path. I don't know. Are the Iranians, are these the Islamic regimes going to start burying bodies without it's giving numbers? Are they going to try and hide their crimes? Are they going to try and make out that they weren't as bad as they was? I mean, if they did that, they must know that killing protesters. These are protesters. These are not rioters. There's a difference between a protest and a rioter. Although I understand that there are a lot of mosques being burnt, this is something that I want because I hate Islam, and I want people to realise that this is an attack on their religion. This should be an attack on their religion. If you think this is not an attack on their religion, then you are a fucking idiot, because the things that they are fighting against are the things that are supported by the regime based on the religion. So yes, they are fighting the religion because there is no detachments between the state and the religion. So therefore it is an attack on religion. But if there is a bunch of trainers on the ground, should I say, which is basically a method for boots on the ground, only not in army wear suit, maybe they're not, France and England don't want to be attacked. So if they go in there looking like they're from France and England, what's going to happen? Well, France and England are going to might get attacked. People we've taken in people from both sides, not realising that actually the problem is Islam, and so some bloody idiots have allowed all these Islamic people into our country. So now England and France are no longer safe because we've taken in these Islamic people on the belief that these Islamic people have nothing. There's nothing wrong with their religion. They haven't chosen to worship a disgusting view on who someone is. They haven't chosen to believe in all the Sharia laws because they're disgusting people who can't tell the difference between right and wrong. No, they've done it because there's nothing wrong with their religion. Like that, seriously, that's how people have been thinking, and I don't know why this has happened. I don't know why you've allowed it. And I support the idea of mosques being burned. Now, if English troops and French troops and American troops and people and Italian troops and maybe even Poland as well, I've seen some pictures of their army being showing that it's being formed. If all those people are going in with balaclavas and trainers on the ground, let's say, and they're just burning all the mosques, then that would be amazing. So I'm looking for evidence to just see what we might be doing, but I feel like it would be quite easy if you choose all the people that look like they've got brown hair with a slight tan, they could easily pass for Iranian people. There was someone who's supposed to be hanged this morning or something, but yeah, I was thinking, does he look Iranian or does he look American? Is this story is real and stuff? Although, to be honest, I thought there was someone who was randomly attacked, a completely innocent person, or completely normal person, just average person walking down the street and was randomly attacked and killed in Birmingham. And I thought that story was fake, because when I looked online to find out what this girl looked like, I saw an image, and then I later found another image, but it was of a different girl, and this kind of made me think, is this story true or is this false? But apparently someone in the sauna said that she has been aware of the sort of concern in Birmingham because it was someone she worked with sent her an email saying that this is someone she knew, a real person, and she was convinced that this was a real story, a real person, because her friend actually knew this person, and she found out on the day that she died that this happened. And I don't know, on one hand I feel like maybe these are all just fake propaganda stories, and on the other hand I'm like, well, that wasn't, and I thought that was. So I don't know what to believe, and I don't know what's the truth or what. I can only judge things by what I see, but I'm seeing a lot of people who seem to be supporting me and helping me, but not revealing who I am, not saying that God is female, not saying anything like that. So I'm getting very confused as to what the fuck's going on. But I would like there to be a bunch of people that are going around and just destroying their religion in any way possible. And I'm hoping that would come here, you know, get rid of all the mosques. I mean, if they're really nice, if there's some really nice Islamic mosques that have like lots of like that are lovely, or if the building can be converted into a nice house or converted for some use, then maybe it'd be better than just burning it, because I don't like seeing nice buildings burn. Even if it's an Islamic house, definitely do not want to see the Indian palace, that one, going up in flames. That would be kind of a shame, because that's a nice house. But yeah, we need to get rid of this religion, and I think part of the problem is people thinking that there's nothing wrong with the religion, and if these are the people who are, you know, the people who are if the people who, the protesters who are dying are just Muslims who don't like this group of Muslims, then I don't care if they die. That's how bluntly to put it. And I think the Iranian king will support the Iranian people, but he needs to also recognize that 30% of Iranian people are supposed to be Muslims, and there's probably another 30% that are Muslim supporters and would say that there's nothing wrong with Islam and supporting them. And you know, how skilled are they? How useful are they? You know, TRIT was insulting him and saying that he's a dictator and that he'll turn on the Iranian people as soon as he can. And of course that's bullshit. But at the same time, I know there's a little bit of truth to it, because Israel is me. And I want to know who my people are. And my people are not just people in a little country in the Middle East. No, my people are everywhere. They're just people who can see the truth, who can recognize that Islam is a sick religion. TYT cannot recognize that it's a sick religion. I don't know why. I don't know why they're constantly supporting them, but I feel like that in a way they're acting like robots who are just programmed to support the Islamic Muslim group without having any ability to realize that this is a war. If people are saying to fight against this regime, it's because they're getting out of oppression. And yes, they might lose their lives. Now, if they're only going to focus on the people who are telling people to continue with this uprising, if they're only going to target them as the abusers and not see the people that are actually doing the murdering as being the abusers, then there's obviously something very wrong with them. I liked them 10 years ago because none of this was happening, but yeah, ever since this has gotten worse and worse and worse, I'm hating them more and more and more. But I suppose Islam needs some kind of support. It's not very much, but I guess they're the ones that are doing it. But I prefer the blonde girl. There's a blonde girl who looks like Legally Blonde. That's my type of girl. And yeah.